Welcome to the video, everyone. This is Jay Tahoe. So, ways back, I took a ballot asking you what kind of content you wanted to see on this channel, and the overwhelming majority of you, 54%, said more Blackpill debate analysis. So that's what we're going to be doing today in this video. Now, I do want to preface by saying, I want to make the content that I'm going to make, and, I'm going to continue making the kind of videos that, I want to put out there. But I am open to getting feedback, from the audience and, addressing what needs to be addressed. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terminology, the black pill in short is basically genetic determinism. And there's much debate around, hey, how much of your genetic potential can you escape, can you surpass? Or, are you just locked to a certain set of conditions, that you must live based on the hand that was dealt to you? Now, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the black pill, but it does have tenets that do hold true in real life, and we can see applicable examples. So today we're going to be discussing, the three major body types: the ectomorph, the mesomorph, and the endomorph, as well as muscle fiber composition. Type 2 slow twitch muscle fibers and type 1 fast twitch muscle fibers, and the impact that they have on your athletic potential, as well as other things. Now, if you search a lot of black pill channels, you're going to hear a lot about bone structure, the face and an individual's height, and the impact that will have on their dating potential. But there are a lot of things that the black pill misses, and that's what we're going to be discussing in a couple of videos here. If you have not seen my stream on the MHC complex and the role that it plays on mate selection in the human species, please check that out. We did a very good job. That video is it's almost 2 years old now, I think, at this point, but it has aged very well. Definitely check that out. We present a lot of scientific articles and research in that video, so definitely check that one out. But for today, we're going to be discussing the three main body types, so let's get into it. Within the black pill community, there's often this emphasis on the bone structure, face and height. But there are many other genetic factors that, play into your overall potential, whether that's athletically, your potential to attract the opposite sex. There are a lot of other things. And today we're going to be looking at the main three body types, also known as Soma types, which comes from the Greek etymology Soma, meaning body. So there are three basic body types that human beings have. The first being the ectomorph. Now, mind you, these body types, there's a gradient between them, right? So again, you don't have to be a hard mesomorph or a hard endomorph. Most of us, fall closer to one than the other. This is also this is independent of height, right? So you can be a short ectomorph or a tall ectomorph, though ectomorphs do tend to be tall the majority of the time. Whereas the endomorph, again, right, you could be tall or short. There are short, boxy looking guys, stocky looking guys, whereas there are also the Brian Shaws and Eddie Halls of the world. We are going to look at real life examples of each body type after we discuss what they are, so don't worry, we will get to that. So the first main body type is the ectomorph. This is kind of the narrow framed, they are often tall and skinny. This is, you might see this, the main sport where you would see this, you might see this in swimming, but specifically like long distance running, okay? This is your endurance athlete. This is someone, who can do manual labor for a long time. They're not as explosive. They're typically not going to have great, upper body strength or even lower body strength, to lift a lot of weight at one time, but they can, lift a small amount of weight a lot of times. This is the kind of person, who could do, 200 curls with a 10-pound weight, right? If they train themselves. They're usually very cut, very muscular, but very skinny and have a narrow frame. Their bones just aren't that wide. And they're kind of built like, you'll hear the terms like string bean or bean pole to describe this type of person. The next main body type is the mesomorph. Now, the mesomorph is kind of in the middle, right? The mesomorph does have some muscle tone. They gain muscle easier. than an ectomorph. This is going to be your boxer, your MMA fighter, in football, usually like your quarterback. Mesomorph can come in many different heights. Characteristic of the mesomorphic body type is a lot of times you will see they have their shoulders are much wider than their hips. They have a very high shoulder to hip ratio. They're not as stocky, or they can't get as big as a mesomorph. Their bones aren't that wide, but their bones are wider than that of the ectomorph. And they're kind of like in your middle ground, okay? They can be successful in a wide range of activities. They can put up decent weightlifting numbers. A lot of times, mesomorphs are sprinters. This is going to be like maybe like a Usain Bolt type of guy, a Justin Gatlin type of guy. When you think football, think Tom Brady. That's a mesomorph. That's a great example of a mesomorph. So that's the mesomorphic body type. And the last main body type is the endomorph. And everybody likes to say, oh, endomorphs, that's the fat people. Well, not necessarily. Like, you can be a very muscular endomorph. Endomorph just means that you have wide bones. So again, you have those short, stocky guys, the Frank Columbos of the world. Frank Columbo at the time, one of the strongest men in the world. He was 5'5". Was deadlifting 700 pounds in the 70s. Just that very wide frame. So today, think your Eddie Hall, Brian Shaw, Hathor Bjornsson, just guys with very, very wide frames, wide bones. Now these guys are going to have a harder time, losing weight. They're going to appear big just due to their frame, even if they don't have that much mass on the frame. These guys need a high caloric intake most of the time. They store energy very well. These are your strength athletes. These are your people who you're going to see putting up world records in the bench press and the overhead press, upper body strength, lower body strength, squats, deadlifts. But they're going to have a hard time with endurance, right? So they're not going to be able to go if they're doing a boxing match. They'd better get a knockout quick, because a lot of times they're going to struggle with endurance. You're not going to usually see an endomorph running a marathon or even a 2-mile race, right? Because that's the domain of the ectomorph. So again, ectomorph, very endurance based, lasts a long time, needs a good amount of energy to put out, but can use energy very efficiently. Mesomorph is in the middle of the two. Can be probably the most well-rounded athlete naturally of the three main body types. Decent in strength, decent in explosive speed, can build decent endurance. And then you have the endomorph, requires a lot of energy, very, very big, very, very broad, a great strength athlete, has the potential to build a lot of explosive strength. So those are the three main body types. Let's look at some examples of these in real life. So here are some real life examples of the different Soma types, right? On the left, we have Wilson Kipketer, a great middle distance and long distance track and field runner, as well as marathoner. In the middle, probably the most well-known of the three, we have Tom Brady, arguably the best quarterback to ever play in the NFL. And all the way to the right, we've got Brian Shaw, 4 times world champion, strongest man in the world, and just an all-around huge guy, right? So we can see that, Wilson Kipketer, he's the ectomorphic body type. I think Wilson Kipketer is about 5'9" or 5'10". But you can see he's got very narrow arms, very narrow wrists. He has a very narrow skeleton. I think he weighs like 125, 130 pounds. So he's a lightweight guy. Some guys you can think of, and they come right in all shapes and sizes. Sebastian Coe, one of the best middle distance track runners of all time, 5'9". Then you had Steve Ovett, who was 6'2", but around that same weight. He was about 150 pounds, maybe a little taller, weighs a little more due to bones, but shares the same ectomorphic, slender, long and slender bones body type. without much muscle mass on the bones. All right, let's go to the mid. Let's go to the right. Actually, now this is Brian Shaw. Okay, Brian Shaw is 6'8". He's near 400 pounds. You can just tell his frame is very, very wide. I'm going to show you an example of another guy who's a little bit of a shorter. What's the word? Endomorph. Yeah, excuse me. Endomorphic body type, right? He's just very wide, has great strength potential, but endurance. He's gonna struggle, right? We're gonna get into muscle fiber types next, but that's an example. That's a strong man like Brian Shaw, Eddie Hall, Half Thor Bjornsson, even I would say Larry Wheels. They're just these really wide guys, and I'll show you another athlete named Eric Spotto, who's an endomorph. He's 5'10", and he held the world record in the bench press for a long time. Brian Shaw, interestingly enough, has never benched 700. He was on the road to, but I think his PR is like 545. It's definitely world elite, definitely world elite. But with such long limbs, it is going to be harder to handle that load, right? Since you do have a little bit um, mechanical advantage when the load is closer to the lever. So the longer your arms are, it does become harder to do that. But he's also got the frame width, to build muscles. So there's also that. In the middle, we have Tom Brady. Okay, this is a guy who he's great at throwing. He's very athletic. He can run to avoid getting sacked. You'll notice that his arms have much more muscle definition than Mr. Kip Keeter on the left, but are nowhere near in size to Brian Shaw. Tom Brady is 6'4", and I believe he's 190 or 200 pounds even. So he's a little on the skinny side for his height, but you can see he's got larger arms than Kip Keeter. You'll also notice his shoulders are way past his hips there. So he's got like that quote unquote V shape going on. This is your mesomorph. He's gonna have much more muscle building potential than Kip Keeter. Okay, this guy is gonna be able to outlift, Kip Keeter. He's not gonna come anywhere close to beating Kip Keeter, in an 800-meter or a 1600-meter race. By the same token, right, he's not gonna lift anywhere near what Brian Shaw could lift. He does not have that kind of muscle building potential, right? Nor the frame to really handle it. Unless you went on maybe a lot of copious amount of steroids, but even then, right? Probably not. Um, but again, he would destroy Brian Shaw at pretty much any running event. He's gonna be a lot faster than him. But if I had to pick between the three of them to win a fight, it'd probably be okay. Brian Shaw has some pretty big size, so like if he hits you, you're going down. But like Tom Brady has enough muscle mass to just duff Kip Keeter, right? Um, but he's also fast enough that he could probably gas out Brian Shaw, right? So eh, again, my money between the three would probably be on. You also have like the fact that Brian Shaw is so big that like the amount of time it takes him to throw a punch, he's going to get hit in the head three times. Although he does have the padding to protect it, but my point being is that like of the most well-rounded person of the three is probably Brady. It's probably Brady, because he's going to be much faster and have much greater endurance than Shaw, but he's also got much more upper body strength, than Kip Keeter. He's going to be more explosive. Who knows, in terms of sprinting speed, right? So these are examples in a real life here. Let's see if I can show you. I wanted to show you guys real quick. We've got Eric Spotto. Okay, this is a guy. He's 5'10". He once held the world record at bench press at 722 pounds raw. You can see, he's clearly the endomorphic body type. At 5'10", he has a massive frame. I think he was 290 pounds. At 5 feet and 10 inches. But when it comes to mechanical advantage, he's got it when it comes to that particular lift, right? The bench press itself. He's not particularly dominant in the deadlift or the squat. You're actually probably, as a taller person, you're actually more advantaged in the deadlift. Because you have more potential energy when your legs kind of like explode up the longer your limbs are. So you do have it's interesting how different lifts you have different advantage based on a number of things. But these are real life examples of these different body types. Okay, so the next boring yet very relevant thing we're going to discuss here is muscle fibers, right? Type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. There was a great video explaining this on Khan Academy. Just search, type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, and this video will come up. It's got a great explanation between the two. So there are two different types of muscle fibers, known as type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers and type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers. I actually think I said them backwards in the intro to this video, but I'm going to explain a little bit about the difference between the two of them here, right? So type 1 are known as slow twitch muscle fibers, and these have more mitochondria, okay? So like this is where ATP synthase is gonna occur. These are for aerobic activity, like running or rowing, or even boxing, right? Anything where aerobic respiration is occurring, that's putting to use. That's employing more of the type 1, slow twitch muscle fibers. And these are not. It's a strong, contraction, okay, and it can last longer. The duration is longer, right? Now you have type 2, muscle fibers, right? The contraction speed is very fast, but it's not as powerful of a contraction, but it's a very fast type of contraction. So this is any type of explosive movement, like sprinting or weightlifting for like a 1 rep max, right? This is explosive power. This is a fast, short burst of energy. This consumes ATP, okay? And it consumes it quickly. So this is anaerobic activity. This is when you think about like anything where you're not, where you don't feel like out of breath from doing it, just once, right? It's in the absence of oxygen. You're not really respirating as you do it. It's an explosive motion. So what's the bottom line here, right, Jay? So people are everybody has type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, but based on body type and genetics, people have different amounts of each fiber, right? So you have a guy like Usain Bolt who is going to have a crazy amount of type 2 fast twitch fibers, in his muscles. Somebody like, as the aforementioned Wilson Kipketer, is going to have a lot of type 1 slow twitch muscles. He's a long distance runner, so his sprinting speed is not nearly as fast or explosive as that of Kipketer, but he can maintain running at a high speed for a much longer amount of time, just because he's got more mitochondria in the cells in that muscle tissue. So typically, how does this tie into the body types, right? Typically, ectomorphs, right? Those long, slender body types will typically be comprised, their muscle composition will typically be comprised of more type 1 fibers, okay? This is why a lot of them make very great endurance athletes. Endomorphs tend to have more type 2 fibers, okay? That's, like your explosive strength, you need to, explode and lift something over your head very quickly. It's an explosive motion. It's an anaerobic, movement. And then mesomorphs tend to have a more even composition of the two. An endomorph can be a decent endurance athlete, and a mesomorph can be a decent, sprinter or lifter. Not to the extent that an endomorph can, and he's probably not going to be as good of a distance runner as an ectomorph can, or a swim or a long distance swimmer, or a marathoner, or on a crew rowing team. But you get the idea. These are the main differences between the two, and this is heavily dependent upon genetics. You know how it breaks down. And this is a very high level overview of it. You know, we won't go into ATP synthase and the Krebs cycle, basically how the body manages and distributes distributes energy. But this is the main difference between the two types of muscle fibers and how they affect you athletically. And the types of your muscle composition, you know, again, it is largely genetic, although it can change during your teenage years based on how you train. Of course, is gonna hypertrophy more of those muscle fibers, right? But again, the potential is largely based on genetics. So, hope this was helpful in understanding the difference between the two. Let's look at another example. Here is probably the best real life example I could come up with, right? When we're not talking about top 0.000001%, world elite athletes, right? We're just talking about, average Joes. So actually, here is myself on the right and my brother on the left. Right, 99.9%, genetically similar, from the same parents. Now you can see there's quite a difference between us. Okay, I am in these pictures anyway. In the picture here, I was 5'7", 5'8". It has fluctuated a little bit due to my scoliosis and kyphosis, and about 175 pounds. My brother, on the other hand, here is 5'10". I would say in this picture, probably about 135 to 140 pounds. Now, you're going to notice, right, is that muscularly we look very different. I have very much larger legs and arms, and my shoulders appear to be a little wider. And that is because my brother is more than likely an ectomorphic body type, right? He's kind of slender and lanky, but a very gifted distance runner. He made a D1 team in college, and he ran a 4:27 mile, which is something I can't touch, right? My best mile ever was like 4:54. So almost a 30-second difference. He's a much better endurance athlete. But me, on the other hand, my lifting numbers are much more impressive, right? Like I can bench 295 pounds right now. My brother's bench PR for a 1 rep max is 205, I believe. So he's not really going to be able to beat my lifting numbers, but I'm not going to be able to come any close to his his middle distance and distance running times, especially not the distance running times, because he ran 10Ks as well. So that's just a real life example. You can see he's more of the ectomorphic body type, and I would say I'm more meso. Definitely not endo, because I just don't have a huge frame, but I have a wider frame than him, and I am shorter. So with more muscle development potential, but not as much endurance potential. So that's a real life example right there. So, what does this all mean in terms of the black pill and human attraction, right? Now, I want to be clear that we're talking about purely the physical aspect here, because that's what the black pill focuses on. I am not saying that, that's what entirely comprises attraction, to be clear, right? Human beings are a psychologically complex species, so psychology and behavior is a large part of the equation, and we will probably go into that in another video, of course, right? But it's also not that simple. There is, of course, the physical component. Now, when you're watching black pill videos, they often tend to hyper focus on the face and height, which are, of course, important components to attraction. However, there is plenty of research that is much more nuanced than that, if you will, right? So please, if you are new to the black pill, don't accept these very rudimentary oversimplifications of what comprises attraction, right? For example, there are scholarly articles out there. The Royal Society Publishing published an article on December 13th of 2017 that I will link in this video. The research was done by Aaron Lukaszewski, and Michael Townsley, and it is stated cues of upper body strength account for most of the variance in men's bodily attractiveness. And I'm not going to go into a long winded readout of this study, but basically the conclusion was that, when it came to the physical, that upper body strength appeared to be a deciding factor in how women viewed men as attractive, which, from an evolutionary standpoint, shouldn't surprise anyone, right? Because when it came to fending off predators, securing resources, getting away from danger, of course, upper body strength would, play a large role in that. If you had to, get away from, a danger quickly, right? An invading tribe or an attacking predator. The ability to run fast, the ability to maintain running for a longer period of time, such as something the ectomorph is advantaged in, right? Could be employed and put to use. So, yes, while upper body strength does indeed appear to be selected for when we're talking about just the physical, of course, not factoring psychology and behavior into the equation, then yeah, it would appear that the mesomorph, with the wider shoulder to hip ratio, would appear to be the most popular. But that doesn't mean, that the other body types, don't have their advantages and aren't selected for. It really depends on what the environment calls for, like some of the scenarios, outlined below. So again, it's please factor this in when forming your conclusion. There is a lot more to it than just facial structure and just height. Those are gross oversimplifications. Um, and these are relevant examples of what's also at play here, right? And of course, your body type and your muscle fiber composition are going to affect your attraction, as well as your athletic potential and what you can and can't accomplish. But again, it differs person to person, and it's up to you to find what your limits are in each. Hopefully, this video has been helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.